What's the difference between a real man and an oversized little boy? Responsibility. A real man don't outsource his life. He don't blame his parents, his wife, his boss, the government, or his childhood. The buck stops with him, whether he likes it or not. There was a president who kept a sign on his desk that said exactly that. The buck stops here. Harry Truman was dealing with murdering communist tyrants, wars, and decisions that could get millions of people stone cold dead. And he kept that sign there to remind himself that no matter how ugly things got, no matter how complicated or unfair the situation felt, the responsibility was his. And you and I don't get a pass just because our problems seem smaller. If you don't take responsibility for your own little kingdom, your mind, your habits, your marriage, your family, well, you may as well kiss a happy life goodbye, because that's just signing up for chaos. I'm not saying don't ask for help. I am saying don't build a life around blaming other people for why yours doesn't work. Welcome to the Hillbilly Philosopher Podcast, where we talk about self-improvement and mindset for traditional men of faith and vision who have figured out that Sunday's sermon doesn't always fix Monday's problems. I'm Ruben, husband, father of 7, carpenter, cartoonist, and classless outhouse philosopher. And when I say we need to take responsibility for our lives, I mean this. If something ain't going the way we think it should, the first place you ought to look isn't outward. It's on the inside. Now, I know we don't have godlike power to miraculously change the economy or transform an ornery woman into Miss Perfect, but there are a few things we are definitely in charge of. One of them is that gray blob in between our ears. As confusing as it sounds, our future happiness and success in life depends largely on us taking the time to think about how we're using our thinker, because that brain of ours is a highly sophisticated tool that literally builds the habitat that we live in. Everything in the world has its own habitat. Ducks have ponds, sheep have fields, goats have the roof of my car, and people are no different. So hop in the pickup and let's go do a little exploring. Now this here road trip is going to stop at 3 different tourist attractions. At each of them, we're going to pull this buggy off the road, get out, take a pee, take a look around, and see what there is to see. Attraction number 1. The Grand Canyon of you picked the habitat you're currently living in, even if you hate it. Attraction number 2. Niagara, it falls on you to diagnose how you're picking that environment by paying attention to the questions you walk around asking yourself all day long. And attraction number 3, the statue of you got the liberty to change your habitat and your life by deliberately changing those internal questions. So here we go, boys. Attraction number 1. The Grand Canyon of you picked the habitat you're currently living in, even if you hate it. In the same way that animals find their natural environments by instinct, people do as well. Many things in life become quite simple and obvious once you realize this. You ever notice how there's that one dude who is constantly in a fight with somebody? Every story starts with, and then this guy tried to screw me over. And you're thinking, buddy, that is a lot of drama for one human life. Meanwhile, I live in pretty much the same neck of the woods, and I can go a whole year without anybody lying to me, cheating me, or otherwise trying to pull a fast one on me. Modern psychology puts it like this. We subconsciously select for ourselves the environments that match our internal stories. It's wired into the hardware of the human mind, and it's programmed into the software as well. Modern neuroscience has discovered that our brain looks for familiar situations. Not fun ones, not healthy ones, not oh my goodness, this is a dream come true situations. Familiar situations. The brain's most basic job is making sure you don't die. And the best way to not die is to keep you in an environment that you're already used to and that you already know how to live in without dying. If it's got to think too much, figure too much stuff out, or get too creative, then it means that the brain has to work really hard to keep us not dead, and the brain don't know if we can do it because we've never done it before, and there might be bears lurking in them woods, and they might be hungry. So best stay where you're at. And if you end up somewhere new, the brain's going to do its best to get you back to something that seems familiar, even if you hate it. As long as your brain feels like it can guess what's going to happen next, then that is A-OK as far as it's concerned. If you grew up in a cranky atmosphere where mama's as prickly as a porcupine and dad's lurking and waiting for someone to get too close like a snapping turtle in a pond, and big bro is walking around like a skunk just looking for an excuse to stink the whole place up, well, then your brain will try to recreate that kind of hellhole wherever you go because it's got experience living in that kind of dump, and it feels like it can keep you alive there, as stupid as that may sound. And believe me, sometimes I feel like there are a few things on God's earth that are stupider than the male brain. The fact is, people are stupid and people do stupid things all the time, especially when they go on autopilot, myself included. The sooner we figure that out, the happier we'll be because that will force us to get off our hiney and take charge. So if it rained criticism 365 days a year back home, your grown-up brain walks into every room scanning for criticism, feels kind of uncomfortable when nobody's criticizing you, and it feels downright unnatural when somebody starts praising you. It starts thinking, wait a minute, I don't know what to do here. This is dangerous. We better get back to safety. And it unconsciously runs back to environments or relationships where criticism is king of the hill. Heck, your brain might even hijack your mouth and start spewing criticism. Nah, I made all these mistakes. Look at this one and look at that one. Well, I gotta be honest. That ain't humility. That's you just recreating your natural habitat right there so Mr. Brain can stay lazy and comfortable. Because in that kind of situation, criticism is familiar and the brain loves familiar as much as I love chocolate and beer. I remember one time I was working at a chicken farm. We had these big old barns with thousands upon thousands of cage-free chickens living inside of them. We'd raise them from itty-bitty babies up to the age when they started laying. Then we'd pack them up and ship them downriver to the egg production facility. Now, one time, one of these hens ended up stuck outside the barn. For the first time in her life, she had elbow room. She had real live bugs, fresh seeds, endless freedom, a clear blue sky overhead, and all of God's green earth stretching out before her yellow chicken feet. That hen could have gone west and started a homestead if she'd wanted. And do you know what she wanted? She wanted back in the barn. She was running back and forth, bobbing her head, trying to look in every nook and cranny on the outside of that building, trying to see which one was a hole big enough to get her back inside. And that is how we are. Doesn't matter if the new situation is actually a better one. Something inside us just wants to get back in the barn with the rest of the dumb livestock. Now, the brain ain't no ordinary cake. This is one of them fancy multi-layer cakes with the chocolate and the vanilla, so you get the best of both worlds. And a second layer in that system in the brain is called the Reticular Activating System. The RAS is a little bundle of brain wires down in your brainstem, and it works like the switchboard lady for waking up, paying attention, and not walking into fence posts. It decides what stuff that's coming in through your eyeballs and ear holes is worth bothering your conscious mind with, and what needs to get used as fire starter like them extended warranty offers in the mail. It's the part of your brain that keeps the lights on and the radio tuned to Reality FM. If the RAS gets busted up real bad, you can even end up in a coma. And this part of your thinker selectively cranks up the volume on whatever channel you've pre-programmed into the radio of your brain through your fears, your desires, and your internal questions. If your internal question is who's thinking smack about me, Your attention becomes a spotlight looking for cranky tones, micro expressions, ambiguous comments, your boss clearing his throat, your wife setting a cup down just a little too hard. Your brain, like some kind of half-drunk Sherlock Holmes, is busy hunting for clues to match your expectation, even if what you're expecting is death, damnation, misery, and all-around adverse weather raining on your parade. You don't actually see reality. You see your training, your expectations, and all the things that confirm your beliefs about reality. That is why two brothers can grow up in the same house and tell you two completely different stories and turn out to be two completely different men, leaving the rest of us sitting there like a jury trying to figure out who is lying. Half the time, nobody is lying. They just have different filters in between their ears. The brain finds what it's trained to find. And when I hear the word training, I think of obedience training, like the kind I should have taken my dog to about 4 years ago. A dog don't need to understand why it's doing what it's doing. It just does it. He's all, I gotta pee. I'm gonna stand by the door. Something tells me that this is what you do when you gotta pee. Or, he said stay. I don't know what that means, but for some reason, when he uses that tone of voice, I'm going to glue my butt to the floor until he starts talking all happy-like and says, good boy. And then I'm going to run to him and he's going to give me a milk bone. Our brain, genius piece of machinery that is, gets the same way about emotional states. Just like the dog that's told to stay decides that the carpet is home base for its hind end, your brain can decide that certain moods and situations are a good home base to set up camp and put it in park. Your brain literally starts building highways of brain wiring so that you can get back to home base faster and easier. That's why some folks walk around like Mount St. Helens just waiting to blow their top, or break down crying, or curl up in a depressed little ball and wither away. The clever little doggy in their brain has decided, this part of the rug is my emotional home, and here I shall park my hind end until the cows come home. And the only one that could tell you that that rug is not to be your butt's final resting place is you. So it don't matter if it's good for you, bad for you, something in the middle. If you're used to it, you're used to it, and your brain will find its way back there just like a homing pigeon. If you're not used to it, Mr. Brain thinks this ain't safe. Red alert, and he'll airlift you out ASAP. Even safety can seem unsafe to that dope. This is why fellas raised in chaos and broken homes often sabotage their own happy home, like some kind of gangster with a can of spray paint in a Thomas Kincaid painting. Their nervous system interprets peace as unknown territory, and unknown territory equals danger. This is the backstory of the guy who picks a fight with his wife on the one night when everything was actually going fine. The genius in between his ears is all, this is too quiet, something ain't right, let's fix this. This is also the story of the dude who wins the lottery and ends up broker than ever in less than a year. Attachment theory from a guy named John Bowlby says each of us carries an internal working model of what to expect from other people. So if you expect criticism, your brain will interpret neutral behavior as critical. Field chemistry with people who are familiar kinds of dysfunctional. They'll just hit right, and it will be comfy hanging out with them. And it will misread healthy, calm people as boring, cold, suspicious, or otherwise unappealing people to be around. And something else called confirmation bias, which has nothing to do with having two bottoms, kicks in and makes it so that if you believe you are unworthy or always in trouble, your mind filters experiences to confirm that belief. So when I say I used to choose environments where I could stay scared, worried, powerless, and vulnerable, attachment psychology nods and says, amen, brother. That fear was my internal normal, and so I subconsciously found or created situations that would match that status quo. You ain't crazy. Your brain's just been poorly trained, like my friend's Chihuahua who's been trained to poop under the kitchen table for some odd reason. Now, to my faithful friends who are wondering if these are all new ideas, I can confidently say that no, these are not new ideas. The Church Fathers was talking about this long before Freud ever picked up a cigar. St. John Cassian, an ex-Roman soldier from the 4th century, said, "The character of the thoughts to which the mind most frequently returns becomes the state in which the soul secretly delights and toward which its whole life is directed." The thoughts we entertain repeatedly become the atmosphere of the soul over time. We start seeking outer circumstances that match that inner weather. They become the default setting on the thermostat or the speed of the cruise control of our lives. St. Maximus the Confessor, a 6th century pit bull of a man who was willing to go toe-to-toe with the most powerful guy in the land, said, "The passionate part of the soul imposes its own form on what is perceived, shaping the world it sees according to its disorder." He also said, "When the passions rule, the intellect does not perceive things as they are, but as the passion inclines it. Thus a man fashions his life in accord with his inner state." The disordered passions, or strong, unhealthy urges of a man, distort his perception, and then that man shapes his external world to match his inner disorder. The Far Easterners actually said the same sort of thing too. The ancient Chinese put it like this: "When the mind is clouded, the world is clouded." Old Zen teachers would say that the novice always sees danger because his mind is dangerous. When the mind calms, the world calms. The book of Proverbs says, "As a dog returns to his vomit, so a fool returns to his folly." This isn't just an insult. This is an accurate description of human nature. The heart gravitates towards what's familiar, even if it is gross and has little bits of chewed up grass and table scraps in it, even if it hurts. Your inner reality acts like a projector, and the world looks like whatever film you keep running. Sociologists like Peter Berger talk about the social construction of reality. People do not just live in environments, they co-create them. If your identity says, "I am not worthy," or "I am the guy who is always getting criticized," you will unconsciously choose roles where criticism is common, avoid leadership opportunities, attract people who mirror your early life dynamics, interpret feedback as some kind of attack, and withdraw or submit in ways that reinforce the whole darn cycle. Put all that together and you get the brain seeks the familiar, the nervous system seeks what's predictable, the attention system seeks whatever you tell it to look for. Your inner story ends up filtering your outer world. Psychology says we repeat what formed us. Ancient wisdom says what's on the inside becomes what's on the outside. And Scripture says your thought life shapes your actual life. You ain't any crazier than the rest of us. We're all passengers on this crazy train, and the only reason it's crazy is because we're sitting in the caboose rather than up in the engine calling the shots like real men. And that is the end of that long pit stop. I hope you're all still with me, because now it's time for our next destination on this road trip. Attraction number 2. Niagara, it falls on you to diagnose how you're picking that environment by paying attention to the questions that you walk around asking yourself all day long. A few years ago, I was listening to a fella named Jim Quick, and he said the questions you ask yourself will shape your life. So according to Mr. Quick, one of the key ways that we keep reinforcing that training is by asking the kinds of questions that recreate our normal habitat. Well, I thought that was pretty interesting, and I was all in favor of upgrading my habitat, so I started to test this little theory. It didn't take me long to realize that I did, in fact, walk around at work asking myself one question on repeat. Is anybody going to criticize me for this? Or something like, am I going to get criticized for doing this? Or how am I going to get criticized for doing this? It was like having a tiny, anxious raccoon in my skull with a clipboard circling everything in red pen. Now, when you are raised in a critical environment, your brain walks into adulthood still trying to dodge imaginary shoe throwing. I kept choosing environments where I could stay scared because my brain was trained to look for danger, so it kept producing opportunities to confirm the danger. Well, this is pretty interesting, I thought to myself. Now, how's about I try changing the question? Instead of walking around asking who is going to criticize me, I started forcing myself to think, how can I help more? I did not do anything fancy. In fact, I don't even know if I did anything different other than to change the way I was thinking. And the environment responded like a good doggy. That very same week, I got asked to train in new responsibilities. It was kind of weird, actually. I was standing there in the cold, finishing concrete, but getting to do something completely different for a change, asking myself, what just happened? Not only am I not getting criticized, but I'm actually getting leveled up. Sometimes the miracle is not God casting thunderbolts and fire from heaven. It is Him getting us to stop asking dumb questions. Once you start paying attention, you realize really quickly how well your questions and your reality line up. They line up so closely, it is kind of creepy. Jesus said in Matthew, ask and you will receive, seek and you will find. I wholeheartedly believe that there is definitely a supernatural element to that verse over and above this psychology stuff I've been gabbing about. That said, even a secularist would have to agree that Jesus was talking good, honest, scientifically verifiable truth in that passage. What you ask about determines what you notice, which determines what you move toward, which determines what you receive. As a man thinketh in his heart, so he is. It is impossible to overstate the importance of watching your inner dialogue like a dog watches ye eat dinner. Every bite, as it travels from plate to mouth, is of life or death importance for that pooch. Every thought, as it travels the dusty corridors of our minds, should be of life or death importance to us. St. Theophan the Recluse, an old 19th century churchman and mystic, said, watch over your thoughts, and you will find them the foundation of all you do. And he also said, attention to the thoughts is the chief work of the spiritual life. What you ask becomes what you seek, whether you realize it or not. What you seek becomes what you see, and what you see becomes what you choose. What you choose becomes your life. So let's swing our attention back to the Reticular Activating System, the RAS, your brain spotlight system that lights up what you're looking for and keeps everything else in the dark. When you keep asking a question, you are basically handing your RAS a sorting instruction. If your question is who is judging me, your brain lights up whenever someone frowns, someone gets quiet, or your boss sneezes in a way that feels personal. If your question is how can I help more, your brain automatically starts noticing the coworker who is overwhelmed, the small problem you know how to fix or could fix if you put your mind to it, or the task nobody else has taken ownership of yet. Neuroscience work from guys like Andrew Huberman and Daniel Siegel confirm this. What you repeatedly focus on becomes your brain's default wiring, and attention literally directs the growth of your brain's wiring. So if you keep asking yourself, when's this lady going to start acting like she escaped from an insane asylum? Or what's my boss going to complain about next? Do not be surprised when that is all that you can see. Oh, and that's all we got for pit stop number 2. Time for pit stop number 3. The statue of you got the liberty to change your habitat and your life by deliberately changing those inward questions. One of the ways to change your environment is to change the questions you are asking. And to change those questions, you need to figure out what you are already obsessing about that's creating your miserable life, and then figure out some better questions to ask. For example, Steve Jobs, the Apple computer guy, turned the world of computer nerds on its head by asking a different question than everyone else. Up till that point, all the Pocket Protector Brigade was trying to figure out stuff like, how do we make the computer faster? How do we give it more storage? How do we make the machine smaller? Mr. Jobs, on the other hand, asked, what if computers were beautiful and simple enough for Hank Corndog down the road to want it in his house? And when you start asking a radically different question like that, your brain starts finding radically different answers and getting radically different results. And the more you do it, the easier it gets, because your brains can grow and change. Something new can become normal, and that RAS can start looking for treasure instead of dog stuff. So, in addition to figuring out what dumb questions you were asking, we got to figure out some better questions. In my case, I replaced how am I going to get criticized to how can I help? Or what other useful thing can I do right now? And the results of that change are very, very nice. Changing the questions we ask has 3 very good benefits. Benefit number 1, it gets us out of negativity. The question, why am I going to be criticized, is chock full of negativity. It just oozes ooey gooey bad vibes like a fresh cut pine tree oozes sap. Just one touch and the next thing you know, everything you own is all sticky and contaminated. It assumes that people are watching, that either they're a bunch of critical jerks or I'm about to mess something up royal or a combination of the two. Not even mentioning the fact that my brain's confirmation bias is going to go into overdrive to prove me right, and that self-fulfilling prophecies are a verifiable scientific truth. The immediate result of this line of reasoning is unhappiness, and it just puts a fella in a permanent state of fight or flight stupidity that never helped anyone to be any healthier, happier, or more successful. Shifting the focus to something positive is just plain healthier, mentally, emotionally, and physically, because living in fight or flight danger mode is bad for a man on just about every single level. Benefit number 2, asking questions starts retraining the reticular activating system to look for good stuff. The longer you do that, the better you get at it, and the more natural it becomes because your brain will shift and grow in a different shape to find answers to the questions that you're asking. Benefit number 3, the rest of your brain will start problem solving for you, getting you what you're focusing on. For example, there's a guy on YouTube named Doris. He sounds like a leprechaun. I think he might be one. And he runs a company that helps business people achieve goals. And he's even worked with some big companies like Audi. He suggests asking questions like this. When you're faced with a big problem or a tough situation, ask yourself, how am I going to... And this is way better than asking, can I? Because can I implies that maybe you cannot. And if you cannot, and you're already a little worried that you're going to fail, your brain's going to start figuring out how to protect you from all the different ways things could go south. And once we go down that road, nobody's even focusing on success anymore. Mr. Brain is in damage control mode. So rather than asking, is my marriage dead? You could ask, how am I going to make my marriage into the happiest one on the planet? Instead of, am I going to get laid off? Why not ask, how am I going to be the last guy the boss is ever going to want to part ways with? Now here's some other good kinds of questions you can ask. What's the first step to starting this project? How am I going to master this skill better than anyone I know? How am I going to go down in history as the best darn dad this state has ever seen? I also like asking why am I kind of questions. These already assume that you can, and your brain gets hunting for positive, helpful observations that will match that expectation. For instance, why am I a master of this skill that's better than anyone I know? Or, why am I going to go down in history as the best darn dad this state has ever seen? A well-formed how am I going to kind of question does 3 things. 1, it gives your attention a clear target. 2, it assumes implicitly that the thing is possible. This is a biggie because so often we don't succeed because we don't even try. And once we assume something is possible, our brain's confirmation bias kicks in order to prove us right, showing us all the ways that we can succeed. And 3, it recruits your subconscious to start hunting for solutions in the background. This is huge. Most of our brain activity and problem solving is subconscious. I frequently tell my kids that if the conscious mind is like one hamster on a hamster wheel, then the subconscious mind is like a whole warehouse full of hamsters and hamster wheels, and as soon as that subconscious starts chewing on a problem, you're going to have the full force of that rodent army pumping out answers to the questions you're asking. And I can just hear you now. Well, Reuben, that's good and well, but how do we go about making new tire roads on this here dirt road, especially when the old ones are 6 inches deep? Well, I ain't gonna lie to you and tell you that it won't take work. Everything in life worth doing takes work. It's not necessarily hard work, though. It's just work. Just making decisions and following through. Putting in your 40, another day, another dollar. In this case, the man plan looks like this. Step 1. Identify your default question. For the next 24 hours, pay attention. Notice what question runs in the background when you make a decision or when you find yourself feeling some kind of negative emotions like anger or fear or envy. Or you pull back from following through on a good idea when it pops into your head. Or what you think about when you wake up first thing in the morning. A lot of times we wake up with a clean slate, but then immediately get to work trying to remind ourselves of all the stuff that makes us unhappy, worried, pissed off, or depressed. Write it down. Don't just think about it or try to remember it. Those are both code words for I'm going to forget immediately and go on autopilot. Put it on paper, or at least text it to yourself. And if your default question is, how fast can I get back to my phone? Well, we got even bigger problems to deal with. Man task number 2. Replace the stupid question with a smart one. Instead of asking, what could go wrong? Ask, how am I going to make this a screaming success? Instead of asking, I wonder if my wife is going to be cranky today, ask, how am I going to be a model husband? Instead of, what kind of foolish things are my kids going to do next? Ask, how am I going to be pleasantly surprised by my children's wisdom and good judgment? Or, how am I going to lead these kiddos to the high road by my example and my teaching? And my personal favorite, how am I going to see God in this moment, in this situation? Now, if you've been brainwashing yourself with brain rot for a long time, you might have to be especially diligent about overriding all that graffiti with something beautiful. Writing down your new question is a fantastic idea because it solidifies it beyond just mental haze. You see it written down, and you physically wrote it down, all of which make a different kind of mental impact. Studies show that self-affirming or goal-related statements can turn on the parts of your brain that line up with positive behavior change. I like to repeat my new question like a chant. Just talking about this is inspiring me to come up with some questions to repeat because I don't think we ever outgrow growing and becoming better men. Now, once you got it all figured out, repeat that question over and over and over and over and over until you catch yourself repeating it in your head or under your breath or out loud without even meaning to. Thoughts that get repeated become patterns of thinking. Patterns of thinking become mental pathways marked with the deep ruts of habit, which literally reflect physical changes in your brain. Well-worn pathways become your character, who you are, and what kind of habitat you live in naturally. Speak that question out loud so that you can get your mouth and your ears and your body and your attention all pointed in the same direction. And don't forget to make some positive statements about the outcome you're gunning for, such as, I'm a model husband, or thank you, Lord, for making me the best husband in the world. And there ain't nothing wrong with thinking positive about other people. Like, why do I have the best wife on the planet? Or, why is this a great job? Or, what am I thankful for today? Speaking out loud is powerful because your brain interprets your own voice as especially important and trustworthy. And when you say something with your mouth, your ears, your bones, and your nervous system all get in on the action. It lands deeper and your body believes you more. That is why confession, blessing, prayer, and vows are spoken in every sane religious tradition. The spoken word truly does something to us. And I would like to end this little train wreck of a podcast with a couple of stories. George Washington Carver, the genius who created over 300 products out of peanuts, used to pray, "Lord, teach me the mystery of the peanut." That kind of a question, in this case it was literally a prayer, is a far cry from a question like, "What are we going to do when the cotton crop fails?" From that position of hopeful asking, he was able to think up hundreds of products and uses for peanuts and other second-rate crops, which helped rebuild the southern economy and gave poor farmers new options and hope for the future. Viktor Frankl, who was a Jewish guy who lived through the horror of the Nazi concentration camps, refused to let the outside world have the last laugh. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening?" or "When am I going to die?" questions with a 100% possibility of causing despair in any sane person, he asked, "What meaning can I bring to this moment?" Rather than emerging a broken and bitter man, he came out of that hellhole as a powerful man and an inspiring writer. History does not remember the strongest men. It remembers the men who asked the right questions. So remember, your questions program your brain, and your brain helps build your reality by showing you what you're looking for and safely guiding you back to your natural habitat. Don't be like most guys who stagger through life asking dumb questions like, "Am I safe? Am I good enough? Is someone going to criticize me? Is doing the right thing worth it?" Take the time to stop and think about how you're thinking. If you always ask, "Am I safe?" you will build a small life. If you ask, "Who is to blame?" you will build the bitter life of a whiny victim. If you ask, "How can I help, build, serve, and grow?" you will build a much bigger life than your current circumstances say that you deserve. All right, fellas, that is enough outhouse philosophy for one day. Now you go out there and give your brain some better orders. Do not let a poorly trained mind take a dump in the living room of your life. You are the king of your home. You are the steward of your environment. You are, under God, the boss of your brain. Ask better questions so that you can build a better life. I can't wait to see what awesomeness y'all are able to cook up.